you lost to McDonald, you've lost some fights that if you were in your prime, you probably would win. Do you worry about that, like your legacy, that you're going to diminish what you had accomplished in your career?
I don't know. Now it's all about the record. It's all about everything. When I first started, it was just about who can you fight. I remember Tank Abbott. He said a great quote: "You are who you fight." And I still believe that way. I like to fight all the best, and this is another opportunity.
Do you feel like you made the most of your career? Because I remember talking to you time you said you wanted to hold all the titles at one point and everything. Do you feel like even though you're one of a few guys to win titles in multiple divisions and everything you've done, as talented as you were back in the day, do you think you made everything out of that talent?
To me, myself personally, I've enjoyed my career very much, and of course there has been ups and downs, but I got no regrets.
Do you spend much time looking back?
Not much, actually. At the last few years, not that it has been some bad years. I only look forward. I only look to, green pastures and blue skies.
BJ, I remember talking to you years ago, and you said, we're talking about weight jumps. I'm going to go up and beat St. Pierre, take his belt. Then I'm going to go up and beat Anderson, take his belt. Then I'm going to go take Tim Sylvia's belt. You remember you were all about, your braggadocio was in full effect, so to speak.
Yes.
6, 7 years later, 8 years later, whatever, what are the differences between this BJ Penn and that BJ Penn? What have you learned in that time?
I've learned, I don't know what I've learned, but I've had a lot of experiences throughout those times, and with that, I look at the sport as the same it always was, and I think it bothers people more than it bothers me the way my career went. If they want to go to sleep at night better, just know that I'm a happy man and life's good for me.
Would you have any advice for that old BJ Penn if you could get in your DeLorean and jump back with Doc Brown a few years ago and be like, yo, BJ, here's the advice I would give you now for the older prodigy?
If I would have some advice for that older BJ Penn, there was really nothing I could do back then. The way the sport is now, I can go out and get a coach for a certain thing and go and do this. I can, you got all these good coaches now. You got the Dolces, you got all these different people out there that we just didn't have back then to, make sure that I was peaked or whatever they call that and right on balance. But, it's just the way life, it is what it is.
When do you think that you were the most dangerous that you've ever been? Like, when was your peak as a fighter?
25 years old. I think around there. I was tough. I wasn't afraid. I was too stupid to know I was going to get hurt. I saw them talking about, BJ and Bruce Lee and this and that. I said, if I was 25 years old, let's see what would happen.
And you were one of the few guys back in the day, you had high-level boxing, you had high-level jiu-jitsu. Most guys were one-dimensional at that time.
What is it like being a part of
and yet it took you a long time to even become the champion, right? I mean, why was that? Why weren't you, with the multiple skills that you had, you were able to win a championship early?
I made mistakes. I didn't know how to train properly, and it always is going to come back to you train too much or you train too little. People will always say BJ Penn trained too little. No one will ever see BJ Penn go in there, gas out, and say he didn't rest himself enough. He didn't rest enough. But as the time goes on in the sport and people start to see and get more educated, they're going to realize, in the future, like, oh, look at him, he overtrained that moron, or look at him, he's obviously undertrained. I think people are going to realize that as time goes on, as the fans get more educated.
What was it about the 2 losses to Frankie that made you want to come back and fight him a third time versus, fight losses that you had to other guys? What is it about Frankie?
It's nothing about Frankie. I didn't come back to fight Frankie. I came back to fight the guy who beat me on my last 2 fights. That's what this is about.
Did you feel like when you look at, especially the first fight, did you feel you won those? And looking back at the films now, do you I don't. Everybody talks to me, but they go, it's really one-on-one. That's not how I want to win. I've never said this is how I want to go and I want to win a fight like this. Frankie, I give that fight to Frankie. That was his fight, and Frankie won the second one. So I'm 0-2 at the moment.
As you've gotten a little bit older, you're still a pretty young guy, but what has gotten harder about training? What has gotten easier?
I think it actually has gotten a lot easier, and I really think it's the coaches around you and the science that they have now. I'm not just, maybe that was a bad word to choose, but just the coaches they have around now with the experience they have now, and know when you should rest, know when you should train, because if I'm 25 years old, you're not going to get me out of the mat, you're not going to get me out of the gym. I'm just going to stay there and I'm going to keep going. And it is an exact science to peak performance.
Science. So let me ask you a question. Do you think you were beaten by chemicals at any point in your career? Somebody that was fueled by PEDs more than just himself, self-training hard?
I always knew the steroids was around, but now I always wondered if it was a myth with all this H.E.A.T and the EPO stuff, and now it's come out to light that this stuff is actually there and people are actually using it. People you don't expect to be using it, So with that said, you don't know who was on anything. This is a sport like anything else, and for these people, although it is straight up nothing different than stealing, it's the end justifies the means for these guys. So who am I to say anything, I guess,
Well, don't you think it's, the UFC's fault that the UFC should have done something to step in and you were one of the few guys that were speaking out for a long time. Shouldn't the UFC as a company have done more than they did over the last couple of years?
I think that's the past, and there's nothing I can do about that. And it's great, but it is great to see the UFC stepping up now, like you're talking about.
During your time, no one ever tried to tempt you to do any of that stuff?
A few times people have talked to me and asked me about it. I said, what? And then they said, oh, so-and-so's on and so-and-so's on. And I go, really? And this and that. But I don't know why I never got into it. I don't know what it was either. I missed the boat and then I talked too much crap about it to go on it later. That could have been what happened.
Well, the second best one.
Were you surprised that H.E.A.T, after he was so adamant on television about what he was doing, that then he turns out to be the guy taking EPO and H.E.A.T?
I was very surprised about that, actually. It's just a very, very surprising thing. I've always heard something about EPO, but I don't know anything about cycling or the Tour de France and all that. But people said that they're using this thing and they can be bigger and have more muscles than you, but have better cardio than all the skinny guys. I go, what? No way. But I guess it's real.
To change the topic a little bit, I think two of your best fights were your fight against Shirk, and your fight against Diego Sanchez. And seeming in both of those fights, you used knees to great effect, and you were able to hurt both guys with knees. And you didn't use your knees a lot, during a career. When you did, they were effective. Is that something that, when you look back on, was a technique that you didn't work on enough? Kind of Muay Thai and knees and all that?
No, I think, you know what? Do you want me to beat him with a knee? Is that what you're asking, Ali?
Yeah, well, that'd be cool. It was a knockout.
I've always kept up with my knees, and they come out at strange times. Just like the kick that I hit Diego with, we don't know what's going to happen, and I don't even know what's going to happen. But I know if I see that guy put his head down, I'm going to throw a knee.
Being the lightest that you've ever been during this camp, how have you felt?
Oh, unbelievable. Yeah, I felt great. I was sparring the whole time at 155, 157 pounds. And, I don't want to say this after always trying to fight at 170, but man, this could be my real weight. I don't know.
What do you weigh right now?
148.
Did you feel a difference in speed?
I do. I feel faster. I don't have to sleep as much. I feel good. I feel as good as it gets, I guess. I'm here. I'm confident. I know I'm going to win the fight, and I'm just going to let this all play out.
Some people have enjoyed coaching on the show. Others have hated it, said it was the worst part of their career. What was your thought being a coach for the show? Yeah,
coaching the second time, whether you like it or not, the real fact of the matter is it's a lot of work. And if you don't put that work in, you shouldn't be there coaching. But it's a lot of work.
And did this season go smoother than the first?
This season was just as much work because the guys are there in the house. They want to get out of the house, and if you got to have a heart and hang out with them, and take care of them. When a fighter's about to have a fight, he'll listen to anybody. He'll listen to the devil, So you got to go and take care of your guys.
BJ, what would you change about the show if you could change a few things?
I'd let the guys out of the house and I'd say, if you lose, you can't leave the house anymore.
Davis comments on kind of how the season went, how it was kind of boring and how he wasn't too pleased with it. And even into the finale, he was saying basically, you know, even the winner might not be in the best standing. Like this is a, you know, it wasn't the best season, I guess.
You know, it was a slower season actually, and from what I hear, the ratings really show that it was a slower season. And Dana was right. People, by nature of having a tournament situation, and by the nature of people being so much more experienced and realize what's going on, you know, it was a slow show when it comes to the fights. And I was telling them, you want Dana to come, right? You're here to get Dana's eye. That's why you're in the UFC, you know, to get the top guy's eye, and that's part of the game.
I'm glad you kind of brought up the nature of the tournament, because the winner has to fight 3 times within 6 weeks. They're basically on a constant weight cut. Do you think the training is a little, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not really needed, right? Like, you can really overwork yourself on a show like that.
Now on the second time doing the show, you better be very, very careful, anyone who's coming into the Ultimate Fighter show, if you're gonna think you're gonna go do 2 workouts a day. You know, you better shoot for 1.